President Obama is dialing 911 for help to fix Obamacare and the rollout and his other second-term problems. The president is bringing in Democratic heavy hitter John Podesta, former White House chief of staff for Bill Clinton, as a special counselor to work with the current chief of staff, Dennis McDonough. Joining me now is David Axelrod, NBC News senior political analyst and, of course, a former senior advisor to President Obama in the campaign and the White House. David, thanks so much. What does John Podesta's arrival at the White House mean?
Well, I mean, he's a powerful addition to the staff there. You know, David Gergen said once that for the president, the presidency is a marathon, and for the staff, it's a relay race. And I think there's something to that. You need to constantly refresh your team, and John brings such experience to the table as chief of staff and in his other roles. He's very much simpatico with the president, worked with him on the transition. He was, in fact, the director of the transition when the president was first elected, so they're familiar with each other. And he'll bring real energy and experience at a time when I think it's very, very important for him to have it.
What will be the interactions within the White House, though? Dennis McDonough, chief of staff, a former chief of staff is brought in. Is it sort of, I know this is at Dennis's behest to help beef things up and to try to get their arms around all the problems that with this rollout and other problems, plus the relationship with Capitol Hill, where Podesta can be singularly helpful. I think there's no argument that they have been less than highly staffed on the congressional liaison front in this White House.
Well, I think John will be helpful there. There also was the addition of Phil Scialero, who was the legislative director in the first 2 years, who had 2 decades of experience on the Hill before he came to the White House. That will be helpful as well. So, yes, that's going to be helpful. In terms of Dennis, look, I know Dennis very, very well, and he is a guy who recognizes that he needs a team, because what's happened is that Dennis has picked up a lot of the slack wherever he's seen it, and he recognizes that to function as chief of staff, you need to have a team doing its tasks so that you don't have to pick up the shovel and do the task. And John will cover a lot of ground, and he'll be a wise counselor to the president. He has a deep interest in some of the priorities that the president is working on now, in terms of environment, in terms of immigration, in terms of inequality, and John will undoubtedly have some good ideas about how to build alliances and move those issues forward, and Dennis will profit from that as the chief of staff.
There's no doubt that bringing Phil back from New Mexico and bringing in John Podesta is an acknowledgement that they need a second-term reboot.
Well, I think it would be foolish to suggest that this hasn't been a rough year. It's also true that many of the people who are there, all splendid people, but they've been there for a very long time. And as I said, I think that you need to constantly refresh your team in order to move forward in the presidency. So this is certainly a recognition of that.
I wanted to also ask you about the handshake with Raul Castro. We knew that the White House did not know exactly where the leaders would be sitting, but you had Raul Castro speaking and President Obama speaking. Not that many foreign leaders actually spoke, but this was a tribute to, in the Castro case, the fact that Cuba did support the ANC and supported Mandela and all those years in jail when the United States government under Ronald Reagan did not. And how is that viewed behind the scenes? Very carefully, or is it something that causes anxiety attacks in the White House? And does it create political problems also?
Given the array of challenges that the president faces on a daily basis, I think this is low down on the anxiety scale. The truth of the matter is, and I heard your conversation with Gene Robinson, I think you guys were quite right. It would have been odd if he had done anything other than shake Castro's hand. And he's always been of the mind, the president has always been of the mind, that these things are less important than the substantive discussions behind them. So I wasn't surprised that he offered the handshake, and I wasn't surprised that got everybody in a frenzy.
So we will relax over that. But it was noted, duly noted. Thank you very much for your perspective, David.
All right, good to be with you.